You are not your mind. The greatest obstacle to enlightenment. Enlightenment. What is that? A figure had been sitting by the side of a road for over 30 years. One day, a stranger walked by, spurred some change, mumbled the figure, mechanically holding out his old baseball cap. I have nothing to give you, said the stranger. Then he asked, "What's that you are sitting on?" "Nothing," replied the figure, "just an old box. I have been sitting on it for as long as I can remember." "Ever look inside?" asked the stranger. "No," said the figure. "What's the point?" "There is nothing there." "Have a look inside," insisted the stranger. The figure managed to pry open the lid. With astonishment, disbelief, and elation, he saw the box was filled with gold. "I am that stranger who has nothing to give you, and who is telling you to look inside. Not inside any box, as in the parable, but somewhere even closer inside yourself." "But I'm not a beggar," I can hear you say. Those who have not found their true wealth, which is the radiant joy of being, and the deep, unshakable peace that comes with it, are beggars. Even if they have great material wealth, they are looking outside for a scrap of pleasure and fulfillment, for validation, security, or love, while they have a treasure within not only includes all of those things, but is definitely greater than anything that the world can offer. The word enlightenment conjures up the idea of some superhuman accomplishment, and the ego lies to keep in that way, but it is simply your natural state of felt oneness within. It is a state of connectedness with something immeasurable and indestructible, something that almost paradoxically is essentially you and yet is much greater than you. It is finding your true nature beyond name and form. The inability to feel the connectedness gives rise to the illusion of separation from yourself and from the world around you. You then perceive yourself consciously or unconsciously as an insulated fragment. Fear arises and conflict within, and with that it becomes the norm. I love the Buddha's simple definition of enlightenment as the end of suffering. There is nothing superhuman in that, is there? Of course. As a definition, it is incomplete. It only tells you what enlightenment is not. No suffering, but what's left when there is no more suffering. The Buddha is silent on that, and his silence implies that you'll have to find out for yourself. He used a negative definition so that mind cannot make it into something to believe in or into a superhuman accomplishment, a goal that is impossible for you to attain. Despite this precaution, the majority of Buddhists still believe that enlightenment is for the Buddha, not for them, at least not in this lifetime. You use the word being. Can you explain what you mean by that? Being is the eternal, ever present one life, beyond the myriad forms of light that are subject to birth and death. However, being is not only beyond but also deep within every form, at its innermost, invisible, and indestructible essence. This means that it is accessible to you know as your own deepest self, your true nature, but don't seek to grasp in with your mind. Don't try to understand it. You can know it only when the mind is still, when you are present, when your attention is fully and intensely in the now. Being can be felt, but it can never be understood mentally. To regain awareness of being and to abide in the state of feeling relation is enlightenment. When you say being, are you talking about God? If you are, then why don't you say it? The word God has become empty of meaning through thousands of years of misuse. I use it sometimes, but I do so sparingly by misuse. I mean that the people who have never even glimpsed the real of the sacred, the infinite vastness behind that word, use it with great convictions as if they knew what they are talking about or what they are against it, as if they knew what it is that they are denying. This misuse gives rise to absurd beliefs, assertions, and ego illusions, such as my or our God is the only true God, and your God is false, or Nietzsche's famous statement, God is dead. The word God has become a closed concept. The moment the word is added, a mental image is created, no longer, perhaps, of an old man with a white beard, but is still a mental representation of someone or something outside you. And yes, almost inevitably, a male someone or something. Neither God nor being nor any other word can define or explain the ineffable reality behind the word. So the only important question is whether the word is help or hindrance in enabling you to experience the tower which is it points. Does it point beyond itself to transcendental reality, or does it lend itself too easily to becoming no more than an idea in your head that you believe in, a mental idol? The word being explains nothing, but nor does God. Being, however, has the advantage that it is an open concept. It does not reduce the infinity invisible to a finite entity. It is impossible to form a mental image of it. Nobody can claim exclusive possession of him. It is your very essence, and it is immediately accessible to you as a feeling to your own presence. The realization I am that is prior to I am this or I am that. So it is only a small step from the word being to the experience of being. What is the greatest obstacle to experiences this reality? Identification with your mind, which is causes thought to become compulsive, not to be able to stop thinking is a dreadful affliction, but we don't realize this because almost everybody is suffering from it. So it is considered to normal. This incessant mental noise prevents you from finding the real of inner stillness that is inseparable from being. It is also create a false mind-made self that casts a shadow of fear and suffering. We will look at all more detail later. The philosopher Descartes believed that he had found the most fundamental truth when he made his famous statement, I think therefore I am. He had in fact given expression to the most basic road to equate thinking with being and identity with thinking. The compulsive thinker, which means almost everyone, lives in a state of apparent separateness in an insanely complex world of continued problems and conflict, a world that reflects the ever increasing fragmentation of the mind. Enlightenment is a state of wholeness, of being at one, and therefore at peace. At one, at one with life, it is manifest aspect of the world as well as with your deepest self. And life manifest at one with being. Enlightenment is not only the end of suffering and of continuous conflict within or without it, but also the end of the dreadful enslavement to incessant thinking. What an incredible liberation this is! Identification with your mind creates an opaque screen of concept levels, image, word, judgments, and definitions that block all true relationship. It comes between you and yourself, between you and your fellow man and woman, between you and nature, between you and God. It is this screen of thought that creates the illusion of separateness, the illusion that there is you and totally separate other. You then forget the essential fact that underneath the level of physical appearances and separate forms, you are one with all that is. But I forget, I mean, that you can no longer feel this oneness as self-evident reality. You may believe it to be true, but you no longer know it to be true. I believe may be comforting only through your own experience. However, does it become liberating?